this visual of Elon Musk and his son X. And I said, X might normally be an odd name, except when Elon's your dad, X doesn't sound that far off the, off
right.
the apple. But it was one of the odder press conferences I've ever seen yesterday. One, because there was somebody more than Trump in the room. And two, everybody else was standing there. It's Trump. I know you look at group dynamics a lot, and what actually happened in there yesterday. What was your take on the whole thing?
Well, I was listening in the car, and it was even unusual just with audio. But I guess a little wide shot perspective, I don't think it was as unusual historically for an American president to have a big corporate guy, the richest guy in the world, in the room. Henry Ford,
right,
and Herbert Hoover had something very similar when it came to solving the, kind of confronting the realities of the Great Depression. President Reagan had, 150 CEOs around him.
Right.
I think what was maybe a little different was how casual, relaxed Elon Musk was in that setting, in a ball cap. I know protocol has changed a little bit on ball caps in the White House, but having his son on his shoulders, it didn't seem like the president really enjoyed that bit of the theater.
He looked a little uncomfortable there.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, rolling his eyes. They got, it's all right. I'm tolerating this, but
Yeah, it was very helpful for me to at least get a little glimpse into what has been going on. I think that has been a challenge to understand with President Trump what words matter,
right?
What words are negotiation tools, and for Elon Musk, knowing what their dynamic is, I think was important. How far does he allow an individual to kind of come into his leadership space,
right,
and social media presence? That was the question. I don't think all the questions have been answered, and he's a very unusual person, and it's not very clear what his core values are. He doesn't come from a Christian worldview. He didn't grow up in American traditions. Maybe just the values of an entrepreneur. I'm not sure.
And maybe he was trying to show you a little bit I'm human. First of all, how can you not trust a guy to take care of your finances who's saving money on a babysitter, right? I mean, that's the very first thing. No, I'm kidding. But the point was, it's kind of like if President Trump were to sit there and give a speech with a puppy in his lap, you'd probably go, but here it was, the richest man in the world with his son in there, holding his son. It looks like he's got a pretty good relationship with him, although his son was, all over him. But and probably not what we would consider to be appropriate for the moment. And yet, I'm not sure what appropriate means anymore. I'm looking around, and what I thought appropriate back in the medieval days is not the same now. And I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
No, I think communications has changed, and communications is almost purely based on the still image or the 10-second or 15-second clip that goes onto social media. So very few people are going for the full context. The Elon Musk X on his shoulders image is going to make its way around for the next, maybe 5 or 6 more hours, and then another image will replace that, just as all the Taylor Swift images kind of, were in our consciousness the day before. I don't think you and I and the rest of the world are trained yet to know how to apply a values filter onto these images. Well, we're essentially every day kind of participating in a Rorschach test where people say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this smudge? What do you think of this shape, the circle, the square? And we have to make decisions based on a value system, but our values aren't equipped yet, I think, or at least our ethical
to filter all that out.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, I want to take a very quick break. Can you stick with me for one more segment, Jeff?
You got it.
We're going to come right back. Jeff Coleman, host of Morning Light on Lighthouse TV at Channel 49 here in our area, and principal at Churchill Strategies. We'll come back. We'll talk about, is anybody opposed to seeing how the money's being spent on our behalf? If they're not, then what's the problem? And maybe the problem comes back to what we just talked about. And then we're going to talk about, when did the F word become something that representatives were really allowed to say in the House? We'll get into some of that as well in terms of talking about what people say. This is the Gary Sutton Show, where we have conversation and examination every single day. All here on WOYK. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show here on a Wednesday morning, 7:23, and it's 28 degrees on Brooks Robinson Plaza out here at Wellspan Park at the stadium. Jeffrey Coleman, co-host of Morning Light on Lighthouse TV, Channel 49 here in our area, and principal of Churchill Strategies with us. So, Jeff, I'm seeing a lot of people protesting, a lot of people standing up around the country and saying, we're really opposed to DOGE or opposed to the way they're doing this. But it seems like a lot of people, if you look at some of the polling, are saying, well, we're not opposed to looking at the finances. So if you're not opposed to looking at the finances, what are you opposed to? Do you get a sense of that right now?
Yeah, I think what people are opposed to is the unknown and whether or not their line item is going to be eliminated and what they can do as a recourse.
Right.
And it's that fear of the unknown where we fill in creatively what we think. That's, I think, for the opposition, one of the challenges they have is because the president is doing it this way, not laying out proposals back to Reagan, like the Grace Commission, where people could examine, debate, have an appeals process, and then time to respond.
Right.
The president's shock and awe strategy, the flood the zone approach, is designed to prevent any opposition from being able to organize in sufficient time.
Right.
Now, that may be a good business strategy. I'm not sure if constitutionally that's the kind of check and balance or public accountability and input that you want in the democratic process. I haven't thought through all the implications, but eventually the opposition will find a coalescing voice. I'm not sure they have a leader who has the ability to be equally creative in how they combat the budget cuts.
I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've been talking a lot about it with people. And the whole DOGE thing, people say, well, government is different than business. You can't apply business strategies to government. I think you can, but government is different in some ways, obviously. But what are your thoughts about that? Do private sector practices, can you use those with the government? I was a big Bastiat fan, and he always said, hey, government is the extension of the individual and the family. But there are other people that say, no. We've kind of gotten lulled into the idea that government is something entirely different. And therefore, we look at ourselves $37 trillion in debt, and we say, maybe not. Your thoughts about that, Jeff?
Well, if you go back to the contract with America in the early 90s, and all of the ideas that came out of that kind of organizing opposition document from Republicans, things like eliminating the post office and all of these ideas where you could show the money, even eliminating the penny. That was President Obama that proposed to eliminate the penny. But once it goes through the bureaucracy, and once if you're on the government side, know how to either hide the money, move the money, protect the money, statutorily or other ways, that really prevents the creative thinker from making any changes. The government isn't by design, I think, intended to be entrepreneurial or creative because it is other people's money. I mean, that's right. That's one challenge. People who are big government advocates or people who advocate for a more active role in government don't find that to be a problem. And they use that friction, that difficulty that the Constitution provides to grow the size of government. However, you can't necessarily use all the same private sector systems to transform government, eliminate the post office. You still have to go through the process of debate and allowing public input. It's a clumsy system, but it's a system we have.
Well, and it's one that it's slow and ponderous many times, and that was the nature of democracy. I think it was maybe the very guy that you named your company after was Churchill said,
"That's right.
Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the rest." And that was kind of that's kind of the idea. Now, again, here's Trump, and a lot of people are worried about, well, is the executive branch carrying too much power right now? And I think that's exactly what Trump is testing with all the various things he's doing. He is shock and awe, and he is pushing the outer limits of the executive branch. And you're seeing, the judicial branch getting in the way of that by trying to slow him down a little bit and say, well, at least let's take a look at this. I don't know if that's all bad right now as I examine the whole thing, but I wonder what you think.
I think it's very good every now and then to shake up the conversation. We stop thinking about, should the government be doing that?
Right.
Is that a core function of government? Here's what I would love to have, though. I would love to have President Trump articulate what the core principles, the animating ideas behind what he's saying. I know what he is against, but I don't tend to understand what his worldview is. Meaning, with President Reagan, I keep mentioning him because he's kind of the last time when you had an ideological president, someone who said, here's where I want to take the country. Here are the principles that will animate me. Here's what the country looks like 100 years from now if we follow these principles. What you have in President Trump is saying, remember, we used to be great. We can return to greatness. And that's a pretty subjective thing depending on where you sit around the table in the country. So I think it's a very good starting point. Having Heritage Foundation and other organizations who are ideological, who do have a worldview, is probably helpful. But it is not presidential leadership that you really need in these moments.
So what would you like to see at the end of the day? Would it be more of a Congress is doing this, a president's executing the orders, although the president would say, I'm doing my job as the executive branch executing the laws, but obviously doing it his way, which is kind of the way he's lived his life with his business and so forth. Final thoughts on that, Jeff?
I think you want a government once it is tamed. Once the lion is back in the cage, you don't want the president to be the center of our lives, whoever that president is. So future presidents from now, you would love to hear from them perhaps once a week. You want them at a high level making executive decisions, but you really don't want them to be the star of the show every day and every minute. Let's hope that eventually this all snaps back into some kind of ordered system where government is in the center of our lives.
Jeff, interesting take this morning. Thank you so much. What do you have coming up today on A Morning Light?
Well, we're going to be talking about some of the same issues. We're going to lead off today really about the communication of a leader. How does it impact the rest of us, our kids, the way we work with each other in business? All of it's impacted by the way the president communicates, any president. And this one has a particular style that has a lot of impact.
Jeffrey, have a great show. Thanks for talking to us this morning. Really appreciate it, my friend. Have a blessed week.
You too, my friend.
Jeff Coleman here on WOYK. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Mike Muldrow is the police commissioner of York City. We'll talk about kindness citations and much, much more with him when he joins us here on the Gary Sutton Show on WOYK, where it is 7:30.